Hello, in this video I'm showing you the variation in London system against early queen b6. The starting position is this one, after d4, d5, bishop f4, c5, e3 and now queen b6. Black's idea here is to stop white's usual setup with knight d2, c3 by simply attacking the b2 pawn. If white doesn't know what he's doing, he's going to continue with b3 and continue playing a bit passively, but here white has an option to in some way punish black's queen b6 by knight c3. This move is very good, and the reason for that is that white has a few threats. First one is knight d5, capturing the pawn, and also knight b5 to get knight c7, capturing the rook. And black cannot take on b2 here because of knight d5, and next comes knight c5, so black cannot do that. He has three options. First one is to take on d4, but then we can capture back, and again queen b2 is impossible due to knight d5, and there's no way to defend against knight c7, and black has to probably move his king, but it still doesn't solve the issue of the rook on a8. If he goes knight a6, for example, then we can simply take it and then go knight c7. So after cd takes, if black defends the pawn by knight f6, we can go knight b5, and after a logical knight a6, we can go c3 and develop bishop d3, knight f3, and have a very simple game, while black's knight on a6 is offside. And in case of some bishop d7, we can always go with a4, defend this knight, and provoke black to give up his bishop pair, while we can develop pretty harmoniously with bishop d3, maybe even start some attack by bishop d3, h4, h5, and get some space on the king side. CD is not the best answer here, but the whole variation seems a bit dubious to me. The second option is knight f6 immediately without CD. But again we go knight b5 and black has to answer with knight a6. And yeah, here we can go with c3. The only way that black can challenge this setup of white is to disconnect the bishop and knight by playing c4, which you will see in the so-called main line of this variation. The main challenge here is, of course, if black does something like this. Let's say a4, castles, bishop d3, c4, and after bishop c2, bishop d7, challenging this knight. But we can go through that after a move e6 as well. We can cover both of these variations very soon. After e6 here we have knight b5, and again knight a6 is a must, and now we go a4, defending this knight on b5, and we anticipate the move c4, which would disconnect the bishop and the knight. Now if black takes on d4, there's no more challenge between the bishop and knight on b5, so it's much easier to play this. And let's say after this, c3, bishop e7, bishop d3, castles, and now we can even begin an initiative on the king side by h4. After bishop d7, knight f3, we go knight e5 next, and we can push g4, g5 with a potentially dangerous king side attack. And I think that white has very good chances here. Second option that black has to try is c4. Trying to get bishop d7 in and attack the knight. But here we can simply go c3, and after bishop d7 we don't defend this knight, we just go knight f3. And now the point is, if black takes on b5, we can take it back, and in case of queen takes b5, we have a nice move b3. After queen takes b3, we can exchange queens, go rook b1 and attack the b3 pawn. Currently we are 2 pawns down, but there is great pressure on the queen side. The bishop on f4 is doing an amazing job of disturbing black's rook from defending the pawn, and it's not easy for black to connect his pieces. He has to go back to b8, but after capturing and let's say b6, there's this check which is quite annoying, and after king e7 we have king e2, and now white is going to double the rooks on the a file, and provoke additional weaknesses in black's position. After knight f3 here, if black doesn't capture on b5, if he develops with knight f6, then we go b3. Now it's too late to capture on b5, because after this, we have bc, dc, and knight e5, and the c4 pawn hangs. And you cannot even defend it by rook c8 because of bishop c4, rook c4, and queen e2, pinning the rook and winning some material. So after b3 here, if black captures, we capture, bishop e7, bishop d3, white is developing very harmoniously, and after short castle, we can go also short castle with a5 on the next move, and white is having lots of pressure on the b file, especially because of the bishop on f4. This bishop on f4 disables black from playing rook b8 to defend this pawn, and it makes black's position much more unpleasant. After these moves, knight a6, a4, knight f6, for example, we can continue developing by knight f3, bishop e7, c3, and after short castles, we can go h4. If black does something like bishop d7, which is the most logical thing in this position, we can develop, and here black's most logical response is c4. For example, if you go rook ac8, we can go knight e5 and even begin with g4, g5 for some attack on the king side. The c4 here seems like the most logical response. We can go bishop b1, and after capturing a pawn, we can go queen c2. After bishop and queen line up like this, it seems like a very unpleasant attack. For example, if black tries to stop this by knight e4, we can go knight g5, and next is f3, and it's not very pleasant. If black tries to exchange queens by queen b3, we can exchange them and go knight d2. Again, this knight on a6 is very bad, so black has to waste some tempi to get the knight back to the right place. White has a bishop pair, white has a potential pressure on the a file, so black is slightly worse here. Also here, if knight b8 is played, we can continue with g4, and now the attack starts. Again, knight e4 is bad because of knight g5, and the knight gets challenged. If bishop g5, hg, and again f3 is a concern for black, hitting h7. After g4, if let's say knight c6 is played, again knight g5, and in case of g6 we have h5, and the position opens up really soon. I showed you some ideas in this early queen b6 line. Let's recap really quickly this. So after these moves, bishop f4, c5, e3, queen b6, we don't defend the pawn, we just develop knight c3, heading for b5 or d5 to get knight c7 in and to pick up some material. Queen cannot capture on b2 because of knight d5 and knight c7 next. So black has several options which are good. One of them is e6, but it can transpose to knight f6 as well. After knight a6, we go a4, we develop after knight f6, knight f3, bishop e7, and we have this position after which h4 is very good. You have two attacking options. Knight e5 is the first one with g4, and the second one is bishop d3 first with the same knight e5. And if black tries to pick up your pawn by doing this, you can simply ignore this and form a battery on the long diagonal by queen c2, and knight g5 comes next, which is very dangerous. g4 is coming next, knight g5 is coming next, and it's not gonna be easy for black to deal with this. Thank you so much for watching this. If you have any questions about this line, let me know in the comment section and I will make sure to clear things for you. See you soon and bye bye.